Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me around the world. Welcome. This is Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp, and I'm the most censored comedian in America. Maybe not outside of America, but in America. Thank you for joining me, and thanks for being a part of this. I got a huge show for you. I got another presidential candidate and her vice presidential candidate as well, Claudia de la Cruz, sorry, and Karina Garcia will be joining me. They are the Party for Socialism and Liberation candidates. They only announced, I think, last week or the week before that, and very excited to have them on. They will be joining the live stream around 3:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 12:30 p.m. Pacific. So be ready for that. But I have plenty of stories to get to before we get to Claudia and Karina. But if you haven't heard of them or haven't heard of their stances on things, I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to be impressed. They are outwardly anti-capitalist. They are proud. They wave the anti-capitalism flag, and to me, that's pretty cool, and it's definitely something to talk about. So do not miss that. They will be joining me at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, roughly. But up until that time, let's get going. Hey, thank you, Insomniac. Love my comedy special. I'll throw this since you brought it up, Insomniac. I'll throw this in there that I have a new comedy special. I'm doing like one every 6 weeks or something. New comedy special called Fear of Death and Other Small Matters. That live Zoom comedy special will be October 14th and 18th, and you can grab tickets online at leecamp.simpletix.com if you want to join that one. Completely different than the last one. So if you were at the last one and you're not sure if you want to see another one, this is completely, hopefully you are sure you want to see another one. You're just not sure if it's going to be different. Completely different. Okay, but before we get to all that amazing stuff and the interview and everything else, let's talk a little again about Russell Brand now and what's going on with him, because it has taken new steps. It has advanced the attacks on Russell Brand. And for those who didn't see it, I did a members only segment yesterday where I went through everything, and I came out with the nuanced view. I know you're not allowed to have nuance in this world. You're not, especially if you're a commentator. If you want to get those clickety clicks, you got to either be just good or evil. That's it. I came out with the nuanced view, the shocking view that these allegations should be taken exceedingly seriously, and we should continue to investigate them and decide what the truth is in a far larger way than just your mainstream media, which is full of shit. So that's one half of it. The other half is they can do this especially with a single accuser. This is 4 at least. But with a single accuser, they can do this to anyone at any time. They can say, hey, this person says you did something. And if that is used to destroy someone, especially if it's someone who's going up against the neoliberal order, the ruling elite, then that is very suspicious. Now, I'm not saying that this is that same thing, because this seems to be 4 women. It's been investigated over years. So far more serious issue. However, while we do all of that, while we investigate it beyond just mainstream media, garbage, let's look at what's being done to him before we are able to get a kind of full accounting of what he may or may not have done. And the latest thing is that YouTube has suspended his ability to make any money on their channel. Now, I've been suppressed or censored on YouTube for years now. Now, of course, I had my main channel, the Redacted Tonight channel, banned around the world. So they actually, hilariously, they've actually done worse to my channel than they've done to Russell Brand so far. However, that being said, because his videos are not banned, he's just banned from making money off YouTube. They estimate that this article estimates that he was making around $1 million a year from YouTube ad money. I'm making roughly nothing McNothing from YouTube ad money, but which is a new channel, because the main channel, the $250,000 channel, was banned by YouTube around the world. Anyway, to do this to him, these outlets are now in a feeding frenzy where they're trying to see how effectively they can destroy his life right now. And you see, especially outlets like The Guardian, it's just article after article after article, just all saying essentially the same thing. They need to find new ways to like rephrase it. And again, I'm not saying don't take these accusations seriously. And I actually think it's quite wrong what some people who I respect in other areas have done, which is jump out and say, oh, it's all not true because he says stuff I like. And I think that is a very dumb way to go about reality or truth, is to say, this guy said something I like once, therefore could never do anything wrong or illegal. It seems like a poor choice. However, so I don't think that the bullshit should be done. I also don't think what we're seeing from our mainstream media should be done, which is the piling on, acting as if it's true when it's allegations at this point. I do think that he should have some sort of day in court in a larger sense, where it should be to some extent innocent until proven guilty. Maybe we should have just a little bit of that. But this whole like, let's make sure he can't have any income. He can't. I mean, so this shit they've done with YouTube. Think about the actual like the I don't even know, the policy, I guess would be the term to use, behind this. YouTube has essentially no actual clear policy on this. It's basically like if the lords of YouTube and Google and all the others decide that they don't like you for whatever reason, they can just ban you around the world, as they did with my big YouTube channel before. They can just decide you're never making money again because they don't like what you've said. It said even outside your platform. I mean, yes, could be on the videos, could be off the videos, could be your behavior off the videos that has not actually been proven in a court of law. That's just, articles about you. And this is ridiculously dangerous. Even if you are someone who thinks that these accusations are true, which is fine if you have that belief, even if you're someone who thinks these accusations are true, to just say, well, there's been accusations, so therefore YouTube can just eliminate this person's ability to make money, eliminate them from the actual entire platform, as they did with my Redacted Tonight channel. It, like I said, very dangerous, because where do you draw the line? I mean, if Russell Brand can't be monetized, or can't, maybe they'll end up banning his YouTube channel as they did mine, but right now it's just demonetized. If Russell Brand can't have that stuff on there without being convicted of anything, then can war criminals have channels on YouTube? Because they seem to be doing fine. I haven't heard of any Obama videos being demonetized. Can, people who've literally been convicted of things and then served their time in jail and gotten out of jail, so literal convicted rapists. I'm not saying they're going on YouTube saying, hey, rape is awesome, but I'm just saying in the past, they were convicted rapists. They then served their time. They're then out of prison. As far as I've heard, they're still allowed to have YouTube channels and monetized YouTube channels. So you could be a literal convicted rapist, do your prison time, get out, and there's nothing. I don't think YouTube demonetized anyone for that. So how exactly does that work? Now, I do think that people should be able to serve their time, and then it should be different. But you look at Mike Tyson. As far as I know, Mike Tyson does great on YouTube. Mike Tyson was convicted of rape. He served time in prison for rape. He then also bit off a man's ear. So there's that. Some might consider assault. So that's Mike Tyson now. Very beloved, massive. I don't know if he has his own YouTube channel, but he has a massive cannabis business. He's invited on all kinds of shows. He's invited on massive YouTube platforms, and all of that seems to be fine with YouTube. So there's no, it's like they have this policy without any actual legitimate analysis of what that policy is. If you read the policy, it just says we reserve the right to ban you from making money. Now, based on nothing, based on whatever we feel like. But of course, who are they banning? Well, they're going to ban the people that are outside of the Overton window, outside of the allowable corporate talking points. And I've said before that Russell Brand says some things that I agree with. He also says and has on guests that I very much disagree with. So I'm not sitting here, chanting Russell Brand's right about everything. I think that's very untrue. But this to me is really dangerous, similar to going after people's funding for being independent media outlets. As I've covered on this show, they've gone after Gray Zone's GoFundMe attempts. They've gone after Mint Press, both on GoFundMe. They banned him on GoFundMe and on PayPal. They've gone after individual journalists like Wyatt Reed and Alan McLeod, banning them from PayPal. I think Wyatt was also banned from Venmo. And this is just for reporting really the truth about the proxy war in Ukraine and other things. And all of this is incredibly dangerous. Of course, they also went after bank accounts in Canada, where they literally just banned people from getting into their bank accounts because they were part of protests that the Canadian government did not appreciate. They've tried to do similar stuff with the protest against Cop City in Atlanta. I've also talked about how this does seem to be creeping fascism in many ways. I wouldn't equate Russell Brand losing his ad dollars to fascism, but I'm talking more about the other areas of this, such as the people facing indictments for protesting Cobb City. In the indictment, it says things like they support social solidarity. And that's one of the accusations, is that they are spreading the idea of social solidarity. So they're indicted partially for that. You've got the African Socialist People's Party that, has been indicted in Florida and St. Louis for one. Literally, they said in the press conference, the federal government said in the press conference that it was for, quote, weaponized free speech. So they're acknowledging that they're indicting people for free speech. All of this is a horrific slippery slope to see these people prosecuted. You got Stephen Donziger locked up in his house for 3 years, his apartment actually for 3 years, house arrest because he won a lawsuit against Chevron, that meaning they were supposed to pay for all the damage they did. All of these things to me have a very similar feel of going after those who are outside of mainstream talking points. That being said, I am not one of these people who acts like, because you might agree with Russell Brand on some political talking points, he can't be accused of anything. As many people know, he spent years touting about how he just fucked everything that moved. Now, during those years, none of it had to do with rape, but still, I think these accusations should be taken very seriously, which I think some people are not doing. So I think you can actually do both. You can walk and chew gum. You can understand that deleting this person from the world, and that's really what they're trying to do. I mean, the media is every 10 minutes news story, even without new information. They're just like, literally, I clicked on 3 headlines that said, more accusers coming forward about Russell Brand to see what the new information was on these new accusers. And every one of those articles, now this could change tomorrow, but every one of those articles didn't actually have new accusers in it. It just said that the police have put out a statement in Britain saying, if there are other accusers, please come forward. So that's not new accusers. That's just the police stating you're welcome to come forward. Yet all of these headlines say new accusers coming forward. And to me, it's trying to delete this person from the face of the earth, even while we should be taking these accusations seriously and investigating them and finding out what truth there is behind them, while not just assuming that everyone in the mainstream media is accurate. I mean, these are outlets that touted WMD in Iraq, that touted the Cuban acoustic weapons, that touted the Taliban bounty story, that touted that Kim Jong-un had his had his girlfriend murdered, and then 3 months later, they report that they saw her walking around. That's what these mainstream media outlets are. It doesn't mean this story is false. It just means let's fucking look into it and not assume everything is true without questioning it. Now, the other thing I said in the members only yesterday that you're welcome to get if you become a member at leecamp.net. You just watch yesterday's live stream. It's at the end of it. But the other point I made is now the aggressive piling on of and the amount of effort they put into investigating this. They spent over a year with multiple news agencies. 3 news agencies in Britain worked on this story, simultaneously working with each other so that this could all come out at once. I've never heard of that. Literally, I've never heard. Have you ever heard of the New York Times and NBC News all going after a political figure and releasing their content on the same day? I don't mean that something comes out and then the other outlet does their own investigation. That happens all the time. But this was a years-long investigation, and they put it out on the same day. Impressive amount of collaboration. And I think that effort, the reason they were willing to put in that time and that effort, and the reason that you're seeing 48 articles in 12 minutes does have to do with what Russell Brand is doing right now. If he had his time in the Sun, his fame, his peak fame up to 2012 or something, and then it just became a non-famous name, a non-entity, and was living on a farm somewhere, I guarantee you this would not be what you were seeing. But instead, because he has been challenging the neoliberal status quo elite on many levels, going against corporate, I call it corporate America, but I guess as a Brit, the corporate ownership of Britain in the U.S., I think the effort is about that fact that he's questioning those things. But that doesn't take anything away from the allegations. They very well could be true, and I think it should be looked into. You can't just throw out allegations because it came from someone that you agree with on something. I think that is very important. It's a very important aspect of this. All right, so we got 13 more minutes until I'm bringing on presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. They will be joining us in just a few minutes. Thank you for being here. Please share it. Please let people know. If you're unfamiliar with them, they are running. They've just announced they're running on the ticket for the Party of for Socialism and Liberation. And we're going to get into a lot of great conversation with them. So before I get to that, first of all, please become a member at leecamp.net. That's how I support this show. I don't actually. Luckily, I'm at the point. I mean, YouTube could cut off my ad dollars tomorrow. And luckily, because they suppress me so much, I make very little money from YouTube ad dollars. So I'm kind of yeah, okay, fucking turn off my monetization, assholes. You've already you've already made it so the channel can't be seen by more than 8 people. But anyway, that aside, hope you'll become a member. And also, once I start the interview with Claudia and Karina, that will just be on my locals page and Rumble. So it's free on Rumble, rumble.com/LeeCamp. So I'm not hiding it from you. Rumble.com/LeeCamp. Please join me over there if you want to see the full interview. And please make sure you click the bell icon. We're closing in on 60,000 subscribers. I'd love to get there soon. But all right, before we get to that, there was a major protest in New York City against climate change, against climate crisis. However, I wouldn't call it a protest. I'd say that a large percentage of it was people walking down the street with a sign and then going home. I actually went to that big one. It was 10 or 11 years ago, 10 years ago in New York City. They called it the largest climate march ever. And sure enough, we just walk down the street and we say hi to each other. And then you get to the end, and literally they had guys, men and women with bullhorns at the end of the march going, please disperse, please go home, with bullhorns. Just that. If that doesn't represent, it's meaningless. It's we walked down the street and then we went home. Mission accomplished. So that is bullshit. However, there were and are smaller groups of people that were actually shutting shit down. And I think those people are doing exactly right. So here's one video of the Federal Reserve in New York. So the New York Federal Reserve being shut down, at least for a time. This is so that is the Federal Reserve. And of course, workers could not get in. Why I say shutting down is because workers could not get into the Federal Reserve in New York while this was going on. Obviously, the Federal Reserve helps fund all of the projects that are creating the climate crisis. I actually recognize that building, even though we're not seeing any sign in that video, but I actually recognize those blocks of that building because I vomited on them once. I did do that. And it was intentional. I'll have you know, it was not a rogue vomit. It was a full-on intentional vomit on the New York Federal Reserve. We actually videotaped it for a show I did before Redacted Tonight. I went up to the New York Federal Reserve and puked on it. And so, I don't know how much change it created. I don't know. I thought maybe one of the workers might have like as he was walking in, saw me do that, and then, reconsidered his whole life and thought like, wow, my life is vomitously disgusting. Like, there might have been one worker who saw me and he, thought it was worth it. But anyway, so these protests have gone on, and the people shutting shit down are definitely important to talk about. Of course, that's not the part that your mainstream media is going to show you. They're going to show you the friendlier marches that just march down the street and then say goodbye. But to add to that, here is video of several of the floods that just happened last week. This is just last week floods. A little loud, but all right. So there's Hong Kong, Greece, Spain, all being pretty terribly flooded. India. Bulgaria, Greece, particularly, the flooding was so extreme that it destroyed an entire area that was like 1/4 of the farmland in Greece. And there's Guatemala, that's Mexico. Again, this is all last week. That's all within a week. The horror show we're seeing. And I would be very surprised if any one of you know anyone, don't know someone who has at least been through some extreme natural disaster in the past year to 2 years. So it's speeding up. It's getting worse. And it's amazing to see these oil company bootlickers still running around saying, bootlicker was the polite way to say that, still running around trying to tell us that, oh no, it doesn't exist, because we do everything that we agree with everything that big oil, big banks, everything they tell us we agree with and we sign off on. And so therefore climate crisis is not a real thing. To me, that's really sad and pathetic, to see people doing that. All right, I want to bring you one more story before we get to Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. This is from Common Dreams. 13 groups are suing the EPA over factory farm water pollution. Factory farms, one of the most destructive industries on this planet, and the EPA does very little to regulate it. They're basically in the pocket of Big Ag, and 13 groups are now suing them over factory farm water pollution. On Friday, Food and Water Watch and 13 groups sued Biden's Environmental Protection Agency over the agency's failure to regulate factory farm pollution under the Clean Water Act. The lawsuit follows EPA's denial last month of a 2017 petition asking EPA to initiate a rulemaking to overhaul its ineffective factory farm regulations, because they are basically captured by Big Ag. So they're not going to effectively regulate Big Ag. EPA elected instead to form a study group to make recommendations, delaying action until at least 2025. Oh, I feel reassured. EPA, don't worry, everybody. EPA made a study group. Don't worry. It's a study group to advise a committee who may one day do something about something. To have no fear, folks. The most toxic, polluting, and world-destroying industry is the EPA is they're gonna talk about studying it, about maybe regulating it once they're done talking about it, and in 25 they'll then analyze the things they talked about. Sorry, 2025. EPA's deliberate head-in-sand approach to factory farm regulation has facilitated a national clean water crisis decades in the making. When given the opportunity to finally right its wrongs, EPA elected instead to double down on special treatment for factory farms. Factory farms are polluters by design. True environmental protection requires a willingness by the EPA to confront this industry head on. It is time the EPA addressed it. Agriculture is the nation's leading polluter of rivers and lakes. Factory farm waste is responsible for a significant share, including at least 14,000 miles of rivers, 90,000 acres of polluted lakes and ponds nationwide. In 2003, the EPA estimated that CAFOs, which is a euphemism for torture farming, having animals in cages so small they can't even turn around their entire lives, pumped full of antibiotics, because when you have animals living on top of each other, they, big surprise, get sick and die because they're living in each other's excrement and everything else. So they pump them full of antibiotics. It's a complete horror show. I mean, if you've ever seen video, you will lose your lunch, dinner, and then some. So they call them CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding opportunity. No, operations. Okay, that's all it is. Just a concentrated animal feeding opportunity. It's torture farming. It's horrific. And CAFOs generated more than 3 times the amount of raw sewage than that of humans in the United States. 3 times the amount of sewage of humans. Since then, the industry has grown by 40%. That was a 2003 number. Since then, the industry has grown by 40%. It's just undeniably horrific. And our EPA is doing essentially nothing about it because they're captured, which is how it's the gravity of capitalism. Capitalism moves toward everything being eventually captured by the rich. Now you can debate whether right now it's 95% captured by the rich and ruling class or 92%, but it's essentially captured. And that's why we will pollute and destroy this world, even as there's so many Americans are opposed to this. So many Americans, if you were to educate them about even a tenth of what's going on here, would be opposed to it. Many are opposed to it now. And Big Ag gets zero coverage on your mainstream media, because that's who funds them, right? How many burger commercials do you see? But then basically like almost zero coverage on independent media as well. Independent media, I think, because your average independent commentator, writer, whatever, eats some meat. Yes, there are some vegans, but most eat some meat. They think that they can never speak on it. But it's like, if we live like that, if only vegans are the only ones who are allowed to criticize this horror show, I think that's a poor choice. I think everyone can look at this and go, wow, that's fucking horrifying. And that's not a good way to live, not a sustainable way to live in the slightest. But these industries own your mainstream media. They largely own your government. Thank you for the super chat, Ivan. Appreciate it. All right, let's do it. Let's get to presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. And by the way, the rest of this live stream is free to watch at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Some of the other streams are going to cut off here in a second, but I'm excited to show this, to bring this all to you. And yeah, very excited that they have just announced their campaign. So hello, Claudia.
Hi, how are you, Lee? It's so cool, and I'm so glad to be on their show. So
Yeah,
thank you for inviting us.
It's great. It's great having you. I'm going to add Karina to this, even though I don't seem to have video for her. But Karina, are you there? Oh, wait. Anyway, maybe there's a tech problem. I'll keep, if I see video, I'll add it. But so Claudia, congratulations on announcing your campaign here with PSL. And you know, I like your motto. Your motto is in your face. It's straight up. and the motto is end capitalism before it ends you, which I think is perfect. But I am wondering, how would you explain, if you were talking to someone who doesn't spend their time studying economics and probably doesn't spend their time even studying people critiquing economics, you know, they're in a job they hate from 9 to 5 or 9 to 7 or God knows what. How would you explain to them why or how capitalism is ending them?
I think, first of all, I want to say thank you again for having us. I really do appreciate all the work that you do to expose U.S. capitalism and imperialism. And I know the backlash that is created for you. So
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you to stand and continue